Well, hello there. Hello, welcome to Torn Tuesday, your weekly dose of all things in Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. The chat room is covering half my face. That's okay. You don't need to see my face. There's
It's
Cliff
okay. You don't
Broadway,
need to see my face either because you have this wonderful artwork from Ted Naismith covering my face. There you go.
the rumored Ted Naismith, who may or may not, actually is not, zero, not
He is
involved in
he
Lord of
is
the
not.
Rings.
Come on, let's not go through that again. He is literally not.
He's not. He told us in no uncertain terms and very publicly
Silly.
he is
Silly.
not involved.
Now
Um,
that was like that was a level of silliness that was worthy of a vaudeville act. And that
hey,
was a vaudeville act, is what
we
that
we've
was.
we've gotten things.
Come on.
Look, that's the fun of being a fan site. We report on every rumor,
Come on.
and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
great to see everybody in the chat room. I'm looking at the chat: Facebook, YouTube,
I can
Periscope,
see everybody
Twitch.
too. Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to have you with us on Torn Tuesday. This week, it seems that Clifford, myself, and Justin, that guy over there, we're here to share our evening or a portion of our evening to discuss rumors and facts and make sure that we know the difference between them. Ooh, I'm being funny tonight.
And
And we're
Cliff,
going to
we have a
also,
surprise guest.
we do not have a surprise guest. You always do that to me.
I'm gonna
We're
tell you
also
who
going to,
that. I'm gonna tell you who
what?
that guest is right now.
Oh
Before
my
you
God.
continue,
But
ready?
I want the world to know that we're going to talk about the kind of Sauron that we learn about in the
Well,
Silmarillion.
here's
We
what's
really want to
happening
talk about
today.
Sauron too.
If you look at the screen, you'll
Mm.
see a phone number 53064 Frodo. That literally goes to my phone. This is my lock screen. That is an angry Daffy Duck.
That angry Daffy Duck has been your phone screen forever and ever. Amen. That is hilarious.
And if you call, it'll say Torn Hotline
It
and it's
does say
going to
torn
go
hotline.
right.
Yes.
And so our special guest is you, the fans. This
Ah,
is
yes.
our special,
Yes.
very rare call-in show. You can
Yes.
text that hotline. You
Yes.
can text us. I'm going to ask a series of questions throughout the show. I want you
Okay.
guys to text your responses. I want you to put them in the chat, and I want you to call. Look, it
Oh,
says
they're calling now.
Torn Hotline. Are you guys? Are you ready? Let's just
They're
answer
calling
it.
now.
I don't know.
Let's answer it.
I don't know who it is.
I don't know who it is either, but I know I'm going to share something from the
Hi, who's calling?
Silmarillion.
Hello, Justin and Clifford.
Hi, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Friend Brennan from town.
Very good, very good.
Hey
Is this your
there. Hey
first
there. I
time?
think, no, this is a familiar voice. I think I
No,
recognize
I've
this
called
voice.
many times.
Yes, I do recognize your voice. Now, the quality of your incoming call might be a little bit garbled, but
The
hello, I do recognize your voice.
Yeah,
Welcome back, my friend.
the way
Welcome back.
we've got the way we've got this set up is Cliff can hear you, and the stream
Mm,
can hear you, and I can
mm,
hear you. So, but you
mm.
cannot hear Cliff. Thank you for calling. What's on your mind? What's new and exciting in your world of Tolkien?
New show.
Really?
Yeah.
Should
It's,
what? So my question to you is then
news is
what should we talk about first on today's show? The TV show, or uh, or some books, or some video
well,
games, or the old movies?
considering that we do not know a lot about the new show, I think we should talk about what we do know about the Second Age and especially the Sauron at Numenor, ultimate sort of Atlantis kind of incident.
Absolutely.
That's a great question. Cliff can't wait to answer that query. I'm gonna hang up on you now, and Cliff's gonna dive
Okay.
right into that. Thank you for calling. Great to
Good
hear
to
your
talk
voice.
to you guys.
All right.
Welcome. Welcome back. Welcome back to the show. That's great to have you here. We have to figure out seriously, folks, that all that deep, deep dive Atlantis stuff, where Numenor is going to be seen transitioning from its glory to a state of decay, and then very quickly into a state of corruption. And we're talking creepy, ugly, ghoulish, really ghoulish stuff.
Ghouls.
Just imagine the Horned King was in a Disney film, and he was collecting corpses for the entire movie. And what was he doing? Okay, he had this monologue at the opening of the Black Cauldron where he was caressing these
Why are we
corpses.
talking Why were you talking the most failed Disney animation of all time?
Because
Let's
it was
talk
the
about
most
winners,
ghoulish.
not losers.
You're not listening to me. Because it's about the most ghoulish. And by the way, Disney has renewed all of its property rights for the Lloyd Alexander books. And here's the thing. By the time you get to this Numenorian chapter of decay, going down into corruption, and they have the human sacrifice and the Morgoth worship, because Sauron is going to make himself busy building a temple to Morgoth. It's going to be all this kind of stuff that you saw, like, you're going to be like, wait a minute, what happened to my happy Middle Earth and my Lord of the Rings world where I can actually get through it? We're going to get to a level of ghoulishness that nobody expects.
Ghouls.
And that is why I mentioned the Disney film, because nobody expected it and it freaked everybody out. And people reacted badly to it. It got a PG rating. They couldn't figure out, why is this guy making love to these corpses and putting them in a cauldron? They couldn't figure it out. And I mean that in the 1930s kind of way, like caressing and
you know what I
cooing
can't figure out right now?
what I mean.
We've got a bunch of new people in the chat room. It's great to see all of you. And Chloe Shippey Illustrations. Are you related to Tom Shippey?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. But seriously, the audience needs to prepare itself for Sauron getting to a level of ghoulishness in Numenor that leads to the big downfall, the cataclysm. The earth will shake and rattle and roll. And then what happens? Wait a minute. It's going to build up to like 3 seasons, maybe 4. If they're successful, they will go on to 5 seasons.
So,
and Justin, what I'm trying to tell the audience is that all the Atlantis stuff has to happen later in the stage. Later, like seasons
Princess Toy Nerd
later.
has got the right response, Cliff. I must have the wrong house because I didn't sign up for horror.
You're going to get some Sauron behavior that will border on stuff that Tolkien has not written about in The Lord of the Rings. There are so many darker elements in the Silmarillion which border on like unbelievable things. And come on, there's even like Sauron can make the form of a vampire, and he can change form into a wolf, like a lycanthrope. If I'm not mistaken, you guys are going to be, if they got the license.
So let me ask you this, because
if they got the license.
Nicholas in the chat room asks a very valid question, Cliff. We know from his letters that Tolkien was an adult, but he purposely chose to avoid the vulgar, right? Is that the word that he used?
Yeah, he avoided, what do you call it? It was called purged of the
vulgar.
Purged of the obscene.
Purge of the, okay, so
okay,
staying on that, if Sauron does need to do rituals and stuff to Morgoth, because it's true, like these stories include that stuff and beheadings and crazy stuff, but is
human sacrifice?
Is it necessary to show it if Tolkien himself purposely avoided the vulgar?
I don't know. You've got the Return of the King with the catapulting of Gondorian heads over the walls of Minas Tirith, and that's about as ghoulish as you can get, right? You also have I'm
sorry, guys. If you guys have not seen The Dead Don't Die, a wonderful zombie movie with Iggy Pop as a zombie and Adam Driver and Bill Murray as the cops.
Yes.
You can watch the trailer for The Dead Don't Die. It's a Jim Jarmusch film, so it's very funny, and it's got Tom Waits in it. But there's just a classic conversation where they discover the first zombie killing, and Adam Driver walks out, as Adam Driver does in his big old nasally voice, and he says, ghouls. I'm going to keep saying this, and I'm going to giggle every time because I just love the way he says that line.
I love it too. I remember that film. That's hilarious. But,
Swag Trigger, I love you.
There is going to be human sacrifice.
This is beyond Game of Thrones level horror.
Well, wait, Game of Thrones ended season 1 with the most famous beheading in
Well,
television history. That's when
let's ask the hotline.
our own Boromir, Sean
Hi,
Bean,
hi, who's
lost his
calling?
head.
Hi, it's Arnie.
Arna, great to hear
Hello,
your
Arna.
voice. Cliff
Hey.
says his best. What's on your mind? Are you ready for a horror show?
You could say that I do have some questions, and I have an idea I want to share with Clifford when it comes to fan casting.
All right, let's start with that. What's your newest fan cast?
Well, I was thinking of casting that Gilstrap Bill Turner from Pirates of the Caribbean to shine as one of the Knight Templar Knights of Gondor who fights on the side of Isildur in against the forces of Mordor. I saw him as one of the Knight Templars in this Swedish film, Arn the Knight Templar, and I thought maybe he would be excellent as one of the Knights of Gondor, for one.
You're talking Orlando Bloom's dad in the Pirates of the Caribbean films.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
I saw him as a Knight Templar in a movie called Arn the Knight Templar, and I thought this makes him look Numenorian or a Knight Templar enough to play one of those Knights of Gondor. What do you think?
that would be Stellan Skarsgård.
That would be
Stellan
Skarsgård, right?
Yeah, Stellan Skarsgård.
Skarsgård is one of the
Yeah.
greatest actors, and I almost see him alongside the dude from Westworld that they recently cast. That is great fan casting.
That is a great
And,
casting. If he wasn't so busy working on Marvel stuff,
if he wasn't so busy working on Thor, the latest Thor movie, so, but we'll see. So and then the other question to you, Arne, is what do you think about Lord of the Rings going deeper into horror of the Second Age?
I like it a lot. I mean, how would you compare how dark do you think the show is going to be compared to how dark the events in the Lord of the Rings were, the War of the Ring, first off. And second, what was Clifford just saying? I didn't actually follow him. I didn't hear his voice, but I saw him moving his mouth.
Oh, I was repeating what he just said, that it was Stellan Skarsgård that you were referring to. But that's a great question. Will this be darker than Lord of the Rings? I'm going to hang up on you and let Cliff respond to that on stream.
All right. Milford Sound for Numenor.
Amen. Great to hear your voice. We'll talk to you soon, Arne.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm really glad to hear from our friend. Thanks for coming back on the show, Arna. That's great. Yes, they're already filming down on the South Island in the region that is closest to Fjordland, closest to where they've ever been. And maybe they're taking some remote camera crews or second unit. Maybe they are already shooting the coastline down there at the southwestern edge of where the Fjordland is. So good on you. Good on you for calling that. And yeah, how dark can they possibly go? Well, if you remember when the beheaded Gondorian soldiers were catapulted and, Gothmog says rather sarcastically, release the prisoners. And then this is like the ultimate horror of warfare. It's like, human body parts being thrown at you. Now in Numenor, when it gets to that point of corruption where Sauron effectively has changed the king, and maybe 2/3 or 3/4 of the population of Numenor are like worshiping Morgoth now. Who knows how weird and dark it's going to get? But Professor Tolkien takes very different tone in his work into the Silmarillion, and that's all they've been reading. All these actors have been reading the Silmarillion, and I'm going to go on no rumors, but just my assumption. I'm going to blindly assume, going forward, that they have access to the Rings of Power and the Third Age and the Akalabeth. And if that is true, just that material will allow them to tell such amazing stories. And if people want to talk about the structure of how the larger narrative fabric can spread out over 2 or 3 or 5 seasons, you have to expect the most horrible stuff at the end of the larger story arc. It's not going to come in season 1. We're not going to start the show being that horrifying. But by the time they get to the war against elves and Sauron, the war of the elves and Sauron in Eregion, and by the time Celebrimbor dies, and this is way after the rings have been made, so that stuff might even be in the end of season 1 or the beginning of season 2. Who knows? But when you get the really weird stuff, that will be later in seasons 4, later when Numenor gets really bad.
I can tell you, as someone that had not read the books going into the movies, when Aragorn recruits a freaking army of the dead, I thought the big battle with the army of the dead was not as ruthlessly undead. Like, it was more abstract, of like, you just saw big green blobs take over the battlefield. I felt
like a wave. It looked like a wave.
It looked
almost
like a wave, and I felt that there was a retreat, and maybe it was an effort to keep the PG-13 rating. But if you're battling the army of the dead, you better believe that heads are rolling, arms are falling, torso, like these guys are just murdering the armies. And I think that Tolkien, and then I went and read the books, and then I went and read the Silmarillion. So I think Tolkien, in his own writing, supported the gruesomeness of fantasy horror as much as anyone. And
he was not afraid of darker material. He was not afraid of dark themes.
And he readily admitted, the later he got in life, the darker and darker his stories got, to the point where he wrote a whole treatment of a story that got so dark, he's like, I'm not publishing this. It's too dark.
He said it was too pessimistic. Are you talking about The New Shadow?
Yes.
Which would have been the events of the Fourth Age.
It was too dark.
He found it pessimistic, and he wasn't interested in pursuing it, really.
So when we say that this show could be bloodier and more fantastic than Game of Thrones, it's still true to Tolkien, even though he said he avoided the vulgar. This is true to Tolkien.
The obscene, purged of the obscene. But then again, we're not talking about obscenity. We're not talking about sexual functions or bodily functions.
Nudity is not sexual. Let's just get that out of the way, folks.
That is also true. There's a big difference between nudity, because he wrote nudity.
Yes.
Duh. Yes. Duh. Yeah. Duh. Yeah. We all know that. We're all very clear on those distinctions. Yes.
What do you say to Andrew that says The New Shadow was not too dark? He was just not interested in writing a thriller.
Oh, not interested in writing a thriller. Andrew is very correct. I believe that, he was not interested in it, and that's to our great benefit, maybe, because if Professor Tolkien found himself not intellectually interested in it, and he's being honest with himself about it, then it would have been subpar. It would have been something that, if he had pushed himself through it just for the sake of the publisher's demands, or because of an over-eager fandom. God forbid, we do not have an over-eager fandom.
I am not anti-Tolkien.
No,
I want to adhere to Tolkien, but I feel that Tolkien's influence has been corrupted by people's personal agendas, and I feel that I am the most pro Tolkien. So, I want everyone to understand that Tolkien was a complicated, multifaceted man whose drive and whose inspirations and whose writing style morphed throughout his life and his career. So people who want to debate a certain thing about this isn't true to Tolkien or that isn't true to Tolkien, and they cite a certain letter, I can refute almost everything with a letter sent 10 years later, or a letter sent 20 years later, or something that was published posthumously and edited by Christopher. So my agenda is to be true to Tolkien and to inform the fandom that Tolkien is a very complicated man, and that's why we love him, and that's why people around the world of all walks of life can identify with his stories.
Well, actually, the reason why I love him was because he was brilliant at what he was doing. He was so brilliant and so good at being a storyteller that knew what it was that mattered. He knew what mattered
Hey,
about storytelling,
we're getting
about
text
why storytelling
messages.
and
Oh,
fairy stories in particular have a transportive power.
we're getting text
He,
messages on the hotline, Cliff.
oh,
Again,
let's get. Are
this
we
is a
getting?
special call-in show. You can
I'm.
text the hotline, and the
I am not
question.
seeing. I'm not seeing the same messages that you are seeing. But go
Really?
ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Justin. Go ahead.
If you're not getting it, I will have to fix the back end. The question is, Cliff, did Tolkien interpret nudity as an Adam and Eve thing?
Yes, I was going to respond to that. Arne, thanks. Yeah, the basic innocence of, and from his very Catholic point of view, the innocence of the Garden of Eden, and the way that the state of grace is given to the first man and the first woman who arise. There they are, created, and there's the Garden of Eden for them, and everything is flawless, everything is clean, everything is perfect, and there is no moral dilemma. And then it all changes when the firstborn elves, the firstborn children of Iluvatar, and they appear awaking under the starlight, looking at the dark sky and seeing the stars. They awaken all naked on the inland sea of Cuivienen,
Well, okay,
where those there's like, it's not like there's a story where the parable of Genesis goes from
well,
purity
you're talking
to
about the elves, right?
total change of grace. I'm talking about the weird spiritual ideas.
Yeah,
But
but you're talking about the elves
but
born in starlight, correct?
well, they're also born nude. So yeah,
Yeah,
only
yeah,
in
yeah.
that
Well, let me ask you
it's
this,
it's
because
loosely connected to the innocence
the,
of the state of who they are when they
well,
arrive.
so
They arrive innocent.
a comment came up on Reddit. That wonderful place that is so humane and not toxic, Reddit. Um,
Right.
the comment came up that no elves can be brown or black because they were born of starlight in the night where there is no sun, so they would not have melanin. It is true to Tolkien that no elves would be brown or black. Based on,
Uh,
and the comment was based on that starlight quote.
well, they were just, they were born before the sun and the moon were making their arc across the sky. I mean, at that point in time, it was all about the light of the two trees. But come on, people, how far can you go with that line of thinking? Because the sources of this light is spirit, is a spiritual light. This is what we're talking about here. We're talking about Tolkien giving us metaphysics, not biology class about how
Right.
skin
No.
changes with exposure to the sunlight.
In fact, he
Come
never
on,
talks about skin color.
it
He never
doesn't
ever talks
even
about skin
exist.
color.
And anybody who is trying to do a Venn diagram and overlap modern scientific biology about what happens with skin and melanin versus Professor Tolkien talking about the spiritual light in Arda and what is coming from the light of the two trees, and the fact that the elves are forever beckoned to come back to Valinor to experience that light and that grace. It's all metaphysics. And I tell you, anybody who tries to collapse that circle of conversation on top of that as a context is a doofus, and it does not hold water at all. That's just silly. That is silly. And that's my final word on it. You guys, come on, get real. The conversation about getting exposed to Valinor is not race. It's about spiritual transformation. And the elves who linger are interested in stagnation, and they're avoiding their ultimate fate, which in Professor Tolkien's grander scale of a message is the sin. That is the mistake. The mistake is about avoiding your spiritual destiny. and going back to the light in Valinor. Come on, it's not a race thing, it's a metaphysics thing. And
I'm gonna
I'm
so
so weary of that. People being
and I
confused about that.
I appreciate Mr. 100 Rupees saying enough with the skin color people. I wish we didn't have to talk about this, but the fact is that
Well, we're
yesterday
here to educate.
we're here to
We're,
educate. And look, yesterday we posted something about International Women's Day and the beautiful cast that Amazon has, and I had to delete 100 comments about racism and
Aye, aye.
and skin color. And it's like, we're here to celebrate women. We're not here to talk about Tolkien and skin color, because he didn't talk
Wild.
about it. So
Yeah.
why are we talking about it? But this
Well,
also
I mean,
relates to the next question that came in on the hotline, because this is tinged with some of that controversy that Cliff was just trying
well,
to avoid.
as long as we are being honest and realistic, and there's no garbage, and we're not giving in to disinformation or dancing the dance of illogic. As long as
Well,
we're being truthful and reasonable about and honest about what's going on, we're going to be fine. We will be
and
fine.
And I
We're going
just
to be
want to
fine.
say that
Yes,
we
we'll
are
be
all
fine.
smart people, and luckily our fans on Facebook and our social media are very smart people, and they're able to
Yes. Oh, yes.
comment and shut
Yes.
down a lot of this stuff. But there is a difference
Yeah.
between informed or lack of informed perspective, that we're here
Mm.
to elevate our
Mm.
consciousness, and there's a difference between that and people that just double and triple down on the racism and refuse to
Mm.
accept any other thing. But here's one that we can correct, and this just came on the hotline. Again, you see that phone number over there, 53064 Frodo? That's really our phone number. That really goes to my phone. You can call and text me right now. But the question was, do you think Ghassan Massoud, the wonderful Persian actor, Iranian actor, I think he's Iranian. Do you think Ghassan Massoud would make a great relative of Sauron's wicked men from the south?
Mm.
And I just want to say,
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
do you think Ghassan Massoud would make a great ancestor to Sauron's wicked men of the south? And
Um,
my first reaction to that is that I no, absolutely not. I think a guy of Ghassan Massoud's caliber, who acted with Orlando Bloom in Kingdom of Heaven, as well as many other things. If you look him up, Ghassan Massoud, we've tweeted about him. He's one of the best looking actors ever. But the point of Tolkien is to show that not all men are evil, not all elves are evil, not all orcs are evil, and
no, but Tolkien says that the men were easier to corrupt than the others, and in Sauron's specific point of view. He says it so literally. But the reason why, let us not forget the real reason why, is because Big Daddy Morgoth had been there in Middle Earth many centuries before the Second Age, planting the seeds of distrust, planting the seeds of evil, and using fear and darkness to change the hearts and minds of human beings in areas where the Numenorians would not have influence until many centuries later. And that is why there is such a different proportion of southern and eastern men in those areas, which are way off the map. And remember, Amazon's story synopsis has told us we are going to the furthest reaches of the map. So, it's a spiritual question of who got there first.
It's a
not the Valar.
It's a geographical question.
But the Valar did not get there first. Morgoth got there first. No question about it. The Valar did not get there to influence the earliest men. So by the time the Second Age comes along, Sauron arrives after the War of Wrath, and he finds it so much easier to influence men, tribes of men, and nations of men. And that's because of the groundwork. His Big Daddy Morgoth laid the groundwork before he got there. Context.
So let me ask you this: Is Saruman corrupted, or does he make a choice?
Both. Mhm. And
How
by the
is
time,
well? Because we know the king of Rohan, Theoden, is corrupted, and it is physically manifested through Wormtongue's tongue.
oh
But
no,
Saruman,
well,
is Saruman corrupted in the
by
same way that the
yes,
South men of the South are?
yes. Do you understand how often that Palantir was being used between Saruman and the Dark Tower of Barad-dûr? You do realize how often, and Professor Tolkien also speaks about the influence that Sauron had on Saruman the White. They didn't start off that way. Saruman did not start off with corruption. If anything, there's a lot of speculation. Maybe Saruman, also called Curunir, Curunir by the elves. Maybe he was jealous. If there was anything Saruman was jealous of, it would have been Gandalf. And Gandalf's, coming along to be, because Nienna, had been the whole relationship with
So
Nienna and Gandalf.
what's the difference
All this stuff
between
boils down to
Sauron's corruption and Sauron's possession of Theoden?
Saruman was not first choice. The first choice to be the leader of all the Istari was Gandalf. Gandalf didn't want to do it. And Saruman was, if I'm not mistaken, Saruman was second choice. He became Saruman the White and always bore the seeds of that latent resentment against Gandalf. And then, using the Palantir, Saruman was exposed to the Dark Lord, Sauron himself, and things got real weird. And then the corruption really started happening. And when Saruman decided he wanted to search for the power of the One Ring and wield it himself. So, there's
So
a difference.
will Sauron Sauron corrupts the men of the South and the East and Mordor, but does he possess like he did
Yes.
Theoden anyone else?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
And is
Interesting.
Theoden an act of possession, supernatural possession
Hmm.
that
Well,
is
that
unique
was
to
more like a
Theoden?
Peter Jackson way it was
That's a Peter
portrayed.
Jackson thing.
It was more like written in the story, The Lord of the Rings. You'll remember in the book that influence, that dark influence, was wielded by Wormtongue, constantly
It's
weakening.
two separate things.
Yeah,
Corruption
constantly
and
weakening him.
possession are different. Yeah.
But yeah, Saruman's influence was much more like magical and possession type in the way Peter Jackson presented it. But it was effective. It was really a very cinematic way of effectively presenting that. But
Yeah.
not to be confused, Sauron is busy, and you're going to see the king, Pharazôn, the last king of Numenor, who I suspect is, our Russell Crowe actor is going to be our Pharazôn. That's my suspicion.
Mhm.
How about that? The kind of thing you saw with Theoden is what you're going to see Sauron doing with our Pharazôn.
Were the blue wizards
Hmm.
corrupted?
We don't know. Tolkien didn't write that, and he revisited the story later in his life when Tolkien revisited.
He even renamed the characters.
He totally renamed the characters. Yeah, Alatar and Palando became Romestamo, and I think, I forgot, Mariniratar. I'm going to get it wrong.
I think Romastamo is Ghassan Masood.
I think Mr. Masood is not going to be one of the kings of the Easterlings. I think he would be great as one of the blue wizards who is struggling to undo all the groundwork that Morgoth had laid before their arrival. And Professor Tolkien reconsidered later in his drafts that they were more successful than he originally envisioned them being, because he originally wrote them as not being very effective and maybe didn't succeed at all in the Rune, the lands and the regions.
People in the chat room are coming into this conversation. They're like, "Wait, you're talking about stuff So, what's the latest? Let me give you a big, broad overview of what the latest rumors are. The latest rumors are, okay. Let me give you the facts. Okay, facts.
Okay, this is interesting. I want to answer Andrew Laubacher. Sauron wasn't even directly responsible for the decline of Numenor, but he did speed it along, though. Now, I don't want to have any contention with anybody, But maybe,
I
Andrew,
do.
you're right, but maybe it's also true that what happened in Numenor would not have happened at all if Sauron did not agree to be taken captured and agree to go to Ar-Pharazôn's private little island. And at that point, he had his ring. He had the One Ring.
Yeah, well,
And
yeah.
remember, I wonder.
Remember when the Joker in the Dark Knight wanted to be captured?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So you're like that. And well, even at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, that whole thing with Palpatine is that he wanted to be captured
Yeah,
so that Anakin would come and rescue him from Dooku and kill Dooku, which he does in the opening scenes of the film. So, yeah,
yeah.
But hey, so what's your
Laurent
what are you going
Laurent
to
in the
say?
chat room says obviously the Silmarillion is the only book to reread before the series release. No, it's not. Actually, if you want to read something probably more attuned to where the TV series is going, the Unfinished Tales. You want to read the
Yep.
Unfinished Tales.
You want to read the last two chapters, the last two chapters
Last two chapters.
in the Silmarillion, because that's second age specific, and you want to read Unfinished Tales, and you want to reread carefully the appendices in the back of the Return of the King.
That's right. All right. So
Yes.
where the show is at, Amazon's Lord of the Rings show. They are currently filming
Oh, okay.
two seasons
I'll-
back to back. They were filming 2 seasons back to back. Each season is 8 to 10 episodes. So we're looking at about 20 episodes, maybe 15, maybe 20. So we're just gonna say they're filming 20 episodes back to back. They are currently halfway through filming. They've got another 5 or 6 months of filming. They're supposed to be wrapped in July of this year. The entire cast, there are 35 actors currently confirmed in the TV show. None of them are huge global stars. The rumor is there are a couple big global stars, and the strongest rumor, not yet confirmed,
is Russell Crowe.
is Russell Crowe is the leading man, and it could be a situation just like Sean Bean led Game of Thrones and an entire cast of unknowns of Game of Thrones, but Sean Bean was the known actor when Game of Thrones launched, and then and then they did what they did to him in the first season. It's quite possible that Russell Crowe launches the series, and then who knows? But so they're filming 20 episodes back to back. That's 20 hours of television. The first 2 episodes are done filming. They were directed by J.A. Bayona. Based on all standard television procedures for prestige TV, they usually hire one director for 2 episodes. So every director gets 2 hours, 2 episodes. So if we've got 20 episodes, and each director gets 2 episodes per, that means we're going to have probably 10 different directors of this. We're probably going to have 5 to 10 directors in the first 2 seasons. So we know J.A. Bayona did the first 2. There is a rumor that they've got a female director doing episode 5 and 6. But other than that, we don't know. So that's what's going on. 35 actors, 1 big name not confirmed, 1 confirmed director, probably 5 to 10 more. They're filming back to back. There are 10 writers in the writers' room. 4 of them are women, which, as you remember, last time the writers' room was 2 women and Peter Jackson. But most of the writing was the women. I'd say, Cliff, would you say Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit were written by Philippa and Fran? Like, they're the writers. Peter,
Yes. Oh, yes.
Peter was busy doing everything else involved. The writers were Philippa and Fran, and Peter, of course, was in the room with them. So
Peter probably did most of the direct rewriting with the 2 of them.
yeah,
That's why he shares a credit with them, probably.
so we've got
10
writers, 4 of them are women. 2 of them are the showrunners. So that's 6. Writer number 7 is Brian Cogman from Game of Thrones.
Wait, well, they say now that Brian's not involved with it at
Yeah,
all.
he's off the show. Well,
Yes, that's right.
yeah. So Brian Cogman was on the show. He's off the show. Tom Shippey was on the show. He's off the show. John Howe was on the show. He's off the show. So
Mm,
a bunch of people
mm.
that were on the show have already left. In fact, a bunch of people left before quarantine even started.
That's odd. When you
So
stop to think about it, that's a bit odd, isn't it?
yeah, so that's what's going on. It took a long
Mm.
time for this show to get its
Well,
footing.
yes.
And it was premature announcing a lot of the people that were involved in it. We did not like having anybody involved with Game of Thrones in it, especially. And I'm very happy that Brian Cogman's not involved in it. So there aren't a lot of confirmations of like who's actually in charge anymore. But we knew that the 2 showrunners are still involved. J.A. Bayona is in post production right now, and so 10
Mm-hmm.
writers, upwards of 5 to 10 directors, and the most concerning stat is there are 19 producers
Mm,
on this
that's
show.
that's a television idiosyncrasy, isn't it?
But we're talking about a show that's only filmed 2 episodes so far, and there's already 19 producers.
I
That's a
think
lot
that
of cooks in the kitchen.
the Producers Guild is probably going to cut a lot of names down to minimize that.
That's a lot.
I wonder.
There's too many cooks in the kitchen. And Cliff,
Yeah,
so
maybe.
Cliff,
Maybe.
I have. So my question to you, Cliff, and if you guys want to text your response and put it in the chat, I'm
Mhm.
watching all the chat. My
Yes.
question to you is, we're going from the single sub creator J.R.R. Tolkien, who
Mhm.
famously did not collaborate with anybody.
Mhm.
He wouldn't even collaborate with his best friend C.S. Lewis. Like, his stories were his stories. So
Mhm.
we're going from one author to, as we talked about, the Silmarillion and the Unfinished Tales edited by his son, to 2 authors,
That's correct. That's two
2
voices.
authors, 2
Two voices
voices.
in one place. Yes.
Fast,
However,
fast forward to Peter Jackson's films, and we have Philippa, Fran, and Peter, 3 creative voices, and now we've
Well,
got 10
also
writers and
at the
19
time-
producers.
at the time that United Artists made their film in 1979, there was Chris Conkling, and the second writer was the creator of The Last Unicorn, Peter S. Beagle.
Peter S. Beagle.
Peter S. Beagle
Again, one writer.
co-wrote the 1978-79 version.
Yeah.
Yes, the 78 version. So that would be 2 voices. And then Fran, Philippa, and Peter were 3.
3.
And now we're going to a room, like a massive room full of people.
Now we have 10 writers and 19 producers and 2 showrunners. Like, that's a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
I think we need to temper audiences' expectations, perhaps, because it's going to be different. We're not going to tell everybody. I'm not saying it's going to be bad. I'm just saying it's going to be different. And that is why I wrote the article that I wrote at the time when I did about sex and sensibility, because all I wanted to do was really open up the conversation and ask, are you guys ready for this? Are you ready for how different it's going to be? And now the very specific information about nudity and the expression of it in this TV show has been watered down or really diluted. And what we're hearing, it's going to be nothing more than like Peter Jackson had naked dwarves in an unexpected journey, prancing around naked and taking a bath in a giant fountain in Rivendell, while Hugo Weaving and the guy from Flight of the Conchords stands aghast looking at the silliness. So if that's only, hey, great. If that is true, and what we're hearing is that's true, that's then the extent of the nudity in the new series will be nothing but that.
Where does the War of the Rings story fall in line with the show?
Well, hey, the War of the Rings story is what they're not retelling. They've already told that story. Ralph Bakshi told it, and Peter
Yeah, so
Jackson and
we're not touching that.
Peter Jackson and all of his co-conspirators made the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That War of the Ring is the events late at the end of the Third Age, really late, centuries and centuries later at the end of the Third Age. While this TV show is going to be doing, you know, middle, maybe hopefully middle and later third of the Second Age,
And
when all the interesting stuff
what
happens.
was Second Age Numenor more cosmopolitan than the tribal lands of the Third Age?
Yeah, second age Numenor is nothing like has ever been seen before. You have no idea. It's going to be grandeur upon grandeur if they do it right. It's going to be amaze balls. Numenor at its height, oh my gosh, because that was the kingdom that influenced Gondor and Arnor and the great kingdoms of men that were not under the influence of Morgoth from centuries before. So it's like, wow.
We got a call on the hotline. Let's see who it is.
Let's
Hi,
answer the call.
who's calling?
This is Joe Hart calling from New Zealand. Sorry, I just had to mute the television because I was doing the stupid caller thing.
Yeah,
I was having the thing I'm watching playing.
Thank you for recognizing that, Joe. That's great. What brings you to Torn Tuesday? What's your response to everything we're talking about right now?
I'm like, even though there's been some ups and downs with the announcements, I'm kind of choosing to be extremely excited and optimistic about this show. One thing that concerns me, and you guys have like a really good feed, not only on the kind of the feelings of the fandom and how the Tolkien fandom works and feels about the movies versus the books versus the Silmarillion versus the greater variant. Also, maybe how the more common people think about it. One of my concerns for the new series is, I've been harping on about how there are no second breakfasts in the Second Age. It's a lot less whimsy in Tolkien's greater writings and a lot more kind of seriousness. And it's the tone is a lot darker and it's a lot more
Exactly.
hard history.
Exactly.
And
that's right.
It also leaves a lot more for interpretation because a lot of what Tolkien wrote was scaffolded in the Silmarillion. I'm wondering, I'm worried that the people who love Hobbit and love, the tone of the movie are going to mistake the darker tone of the Amazon series as you're trying to be Game of Thrones, where what's actually happening, I think, is Game of Thrones was kind of trying to be the Silmarillion. I'm wondering how you guys think about that.
Bingo.
That is a great question. Cliff can't wait to respond to this. I'm going to hang up on you now, and then we're going to respond on the air. Joe, thanks for calling. I appreciate the call, and great to hear your voice.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Oh my God, I don't think we have ever had a more adroit observation on our show from a call-in guest. That's for sure. I mean, the real difficulty is Amazon.
Hey,
now,
if that's an Amazon plant, all good.
That doesn't matter to me. I don't know who it, but I mean, I'm telling you, the real problem will be to dance the dance of expectations. Always. This is the biggest intellectual property they could ever touch, and it's the most expensive intellectual property. They don't want to muck about. They do not want to muck things up.
To the point of his question, that everyone considers the best part of the Hobbit trilogy, the 9 hours of Hobbit trilogy, is the first hour in Bag End.
Because it is, as Philippa Boyens described it, it is a golden-hued fairy story. It has this golden color, a golden-hued, like simpler, more gentle, and a more maybe pastoral. Some of the storytelling really
agrarian,
is, and it's like that in the opening of the Fellowship of the Ring as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Joe is right that people's expectations probably have to be checked right now, early in the game, because the stuff in the Silmarillion and Unfinished Tales and all the stuff in the appendices even, is much, much darker in tone, and there are no second breakfasts in the Second Age. What a adroit observation. But now,
Is there anything in the
if the
second age?
confusion go on, let me just say this: if the confusion between the audience thinking, "Oh, you're trying to be like David Benioff and DB Weiss. You're trying to, you know, chop off Sean Astin's head really, really early and be like Game of Thrones." But no, come on, the honest reality is there's plenty of that in the Second Age already. But like I said earlier in the show, it gets worse and more ghoulish later on. We're talking
Ghouls.
season 4, maybe season 5 is when it gets to its absolute darkest state.
Well, so the question
Maybe
is,
maybe
people in the
maybe
chat
early
room.
on they should ease us into it.
Well,
Maybe they could make it easy for
people
us.
in the chat room are saying that they didn't quite hear the question. So the question was, and I'm paraphrasing, because it was so well informed. The question is for a for the normies, for the casual
Yeah,
fans that don't
yeah.
check the One Ring every day for news, who
And
love
their
who
exposure to the storytelling is The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings
who
films.
love Lord of the Rings, who watch it
Mhm,
with the family at Christmas, but other than that, they're not thinking about it. But they love it, they like it. But if for all the people that are casual fans like that, that appreciate the Hobbit part, the hobbits, the Shire, the simple food, home, and hearth messages,
the
that the
gentleness
gentleness of
of
Lord of
that
the
world.
Rings,
Yeah,
what is their entry point to the Second Age to prevent those casual fans saying, "Oh, I love hobbits. Of course I'm going to tune into the show." And then they see like, "Oh, this is death, destruction, beheadings,
hmm
nudity,
we don't know yet.
idol worship, destruction of cities, multiculturalism run amok, Eastern, Western, blue
What? Oh my God.
wizards." Like this, there's
Okay, what?
nothing homely. There's nothing homely
You mean
about
homey, homey?
homey,
You mean home like,
home like. There's
home
nothing
like?
Shire like.
Look. This is an interesting dilemma to get the normies. You want to call that audience the the normies? Okay, fine, whatever. You're so funny. You're so funny when you do that, Justin. It's weird, but if you want to get the normies to come into a Second Age show, and that is the question for the audience who is catching up with us now, without that audience automatically assuming that they're just trying to do a carbon copy of David Benioff and D.B. Weiss and Game of Thrones. Well, my suggestion is that the first season might start us off a little easier before we get to the darker stuff later at the end of the first season. But honestly, there's no way to get around it. There are no hobbits. There's no Shire. They have not settled. They have not, as a people, a whole population of people migrated from the river Anduin over the mountains, the Misty Mountains, and hundreds and hundreds of miles to the west area where the Shire was later founded. But that happens in the Third Age. It happens centuries after when this TV show happens. So you know what?
So
Let's speculate. Let's ask the audience, are you guys going to be uncomfortable if they introduce hobbits and the Shire early when they're not supposed to be in the timeline of the Second Age? Let's ask the audience that right now. I want to know what they think.
you can text us an answer or put it in the chat
Text
room.
us an
Do you
answer.
think they should play with the timeline and put some Shire like folk, some
Mm.
halflings into this?
But there aren't any. They're not written that way. Professor
they
Tolkien
can
did
play
not
with it. It's the
write
magic of movie. The
that.
magic of movie making is that you
But
can totally destroy Faramir and people will still love the character.
well, I'll take that point. Okay, I'll take that point. But if the audience loses faith in episode 1 or episode 2 because there's a bunch of hobbits running around and all the fans are screaming there are no hobbits in the Second Age at all, this is a dilemma. I don't know
Oh,
how
so
they're going to
let me give you
introduce.
some hope. Let me give you some hope
There are
because
no
Nicolas in
hobbits.
the
So
chat room says people singing and dancing and enjoying themselves. the Bombadilian perspective. That's a great word. So let me give you guys some hope, okay?
I like that.
We do
I like
know we do know that Sauron has 19 rings to give away to all the leaders of the lands. That's 19 rulers from 19 um, areas of Middle Earth, of 19 communities of people and dwarves, elves, men, and dwarves. Okay, there are 19 rings that need to distribution and creation, distribution. So there's nothing to say that there are 9 races of dwarves. There's nothing to say that the dwarven community may be our homely hobbits of the second age.
You mean an off branching from one of the 9 fathers
No, no, no.
of the I mean one of the 7, excuse me.
I
7 fathers of the dwarves
I don't
who
think
were
they could,
awakened by their
I-
creator,
I
Ole.
I don't know if the fans are ready to go that far, but I know
Well,
from a personality perspective,
Professor Tolkien never ever indicated that.
and
There's no
he never didn't indicate it.
Oh, wait a minute. Now you're just wholesale
But
making stuff up.
okay. Let me pause that. Ignore that. I'm saying that there are 9 races of dwarves.
7.
That
There are 7 fathers of dwarves.
9 races of men, 7 fathers of dwarves. There are 7 fathers of dwarves. There are 7 groups of dwarves that could be jovial and friendly and agrarian.
Nope, it's not going to happen. Nope.
I'm telling you, like all 7 of them have to be mining. No,
The hobbits are an off branch of the human race, of the second born children of Iluvatar, the race of men. The hobbits are an offshoot. They are a subspecies, for lack of a better term. That's not correct. Maybe I should retract that statement.
Okay, so what was Smeagol and Deagle? They weren't hobbits.
They were hobbits. They were hobbits.
They were hobbits.
Before
they were
actually
hobbit-like, or they were hobbits?
They were the earliest people who migrated over the mountains and settled in the Shire and became known as the hobbits, although the men in the kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor had a very different name for them. I believe they called them the Perianath.
I'm just saying the
them.
opportunities that the writers have with this show is that they have 7 races of dwarves. One of them can be homely and welcoming.
You mean home-like?
Home-like, friendly. They can be portly. They can enjoy their mead. They like
mead. It's not a D&D game. Oh my God, mead.
I don't know. Also, there are tons of cultures in the East and the South that could that could be equivalents of Arnor and Gondor and Rohan. The horse lords, the welcoming agrarian society of Rohan. There is a southern version of that, and there's an eastern version of that. There's Tolkien explicitly says in his letters that he wanted to put the pillars up and encourage other people to explore, to build upon the pillars he created. So Tolkien encouraged that. Tolkien specifically did not write things as much as he wrote things, right? So he purposely did not shut down certain avenues of exploration. So I'm saying there's a lot of opportunity, but there's a lot of opportunity to have a friendly, positive, inviting energy that the hobbits served in the Third Age. But I'm gonna tell you, let's get back to the real world. I'm gonna tell you right now, they did not. The writers' room, the 10 writers that they've hired for this show, come from Hannibal, Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, The Sopranos. Like, those are some of the darkest uh,
Yes.
antagonist
Ah,
driven shows.
I see
Is
your point.
is
Yeah,
Saul Goodman a good guy? Was Walter White a good guy? He's the
I
hero
see.
of the show,
I
but
see your point.
is he a good guy? The point is that Amazon has hired the best writers from the darkest shows. So
Hmm.
I think, to our caller's question, if Amazon is watching, I think the challenge ahead of Amazon is exactly what this caller just said. You've got to prep the audience that this ain't no Hobbit show.
Well, it one of our best commentators in the YouTube chat, Andrew. My compliments to you, Andrew Laubacker. He says it's quite possible that the ancestors of the hobbits might not have even reached the river vales of the Anduin during the Second Age. So maybe they're elsewhere on the map. But yes, um,
And
and he says
nothing we've just
he
nothing we've
also
just
asked.
said nothing we just said is outside of Tolkien's intentions.
Hmm,
Nothing.
might yeah, well, hold on. He says might the Druidane be the show's stand-ins for hobbits? And the Druidine, well, if I'm not pronouncing it right, forgive me, but they we're talking about, Gonbury Gone and those uh, smaller folk, the wild folk who lived in those wooded areas in the northern slopes of the White Mountains, the Ired Nimres. Intriguing
Look,
concept.
if they if,
Hmm. But
this is why I really think it's really important that I really hope that this blue wizard rumor proves true. I think we need the positive energy of the blue wizards. We need that guiding moral force in the face of a very dark timeline.
well, it would fill a lot of fan service because we've seen so much of Gandalf and Saruman, and we've seen plenty of Radagast, and people don't want to ever see bird poop on Sylvester McCoy's face ever again. But now, just to have the blue wizards who arrived early, now that could be interesting, that we get two blue wizards and spend a lot of time with these guys uh, who were once named Alatar and Palando. Um, but imagine that we don't ever get Gandalf or Saruman or Radagast because Tolkien said they arrived in the Third Age.
We do
It
get
would be
Galadriel and Elrond.
it would be really intriguing, really cool fan service to have the Blue Wizards
You,
the
you,
way they
you,
were re-envisioned by Tolkien later in his life to be more successful in their efforts. That'd
I
be
mean,
really cool.
the really interesting thing for me is that we know for a fact that Galadriel and Elrond will be in the show. This series is going to show why Elrond says three words. If you want to encapsulate almost everything into
Hmm.
what this show is about, we can put it into three words that Elrond speaks. Men are weak.
Hmm. That's right. And Sauron takes advantage of that. Um, and I think Morenatar and Romestamo, the Blue Wizards, um, if they indeed do get those secondary names, it depends upon the licensing that the show has. But wow, those wizards being able to go to the furthest reaches off the map, like they're threatening to do in the story synopsis, right? We all know the
Mm-hmm.
text of that big story synopsis. We know what they said. Amazon Studios is trying to clue us in, I believe, to those areas of Middle Earth where Romestamo and Morenatar, who previously the Blue Wizards were known as Alatar and Palando. I think that would be really, really cool, really wonderful. And I would be really down with that, to never have Gandalf or Saruman or Radagast show up at all and let us have nothing but the Blue Wizards for a few years. That would be cool. But we don't know enough about it, and a lot of fans are going to say, "Oh, you're just doing Tauriel again. You're just
Camilla in the
you're
chat
just making
room,
stuff up." But
Camilla in the chat room
you
recently
know,
saw a movie called Saint Maud.
mhm.
Please make an effort to watch Saint Maud, Maud. It stars Morfydd Clark, who is our Galadriel. And I'm telling you, this is I saw Saint Maud at Sundance 2 years ago. So it's one of the reasons I'm so
Mhm.
enthusiastic
Mhm.
about her casting. If you want to know the caliber of acting that they've hired, um, start with this movie Saint Maud, because you need it. You know, as we're wrapping up our conversation, Cliff,
Yes.
to based on everything that we said today, and on the chat, if you want to read more of what this series is going to be about, you want to start with the Unfinished Tales, and then read the last two chapters of the Silmarillion. You want to watch Saint Maud to see Galadriel, the actress playing Galadriel, in action. You will be totally sold on the caliber of casting once you see this movie.
Mhm.
And then you want to recognize that the writers of this show come from very dark shows.
Yep.
So this
Yes, they
is
do.
a dark
Yeah.
show, and the challenge, and Cliff, you know, we've heard rumors of, you know, like, you know, the brass at Amazon, the execs at Amazon, like, well, how can we have a show without hobbits? Can't you work hobbits into it sometime, or, you know, like, I don't think I don't think you fix the problem that we talked about today about normal people loving hobbits. You can't fix that in the scripts of the show. I think the marketing, I think a lot of a lot of the work now is on
Mm.
the marketing of this show
Mm.
to prepare fans and prepare regular people
Mm.
for something completely dark and very conniving, and a show about a bad guy you're gonna love.
Mhm.
Like you loved Hannibal, like you loved Walter White, like you love Saul Goodman, like you love Tony Soprano. You're you're gonna like this guy. You're gonna want to watch Sauron,
Mhm.
Anatar, whatever they call him.
Well,
You're gonna want to
actually,
watch him.
there's also a contingent of fans, like the people who are contacting us right now on the hotline. They don't want any hobbits at all. Not only is a larger community of fans interested in fidelity to what is existing on the page, but you know, a lot of fans, I think, would be quite happy that there is no Bag End, there's no Shire, and there's no beautiful rolling hills for the Hobbit children to roll around in and play with dragonflies all day. I think that they're ready to graduate to another level of J.R.R. Tolkien and a lot of the other stuff that has never ever been produced, and we've never seen any adaptation on it of it. I'm with that camp of people who are like, no hobbits, please,
We
no
got
hobbits.
another text message, Cliff. This is a great perspective. You could tell in the Hobbit movies what was Tolkien and what was not.
Mm.
And
Mm.
to that point, I want to say that this entire show
Mm.
is Tolkien to the point that he built the pillars and encouraged people to build on top of his work. This is the show that Tolkien envisioned would be made. This is the continuation of the living, breathing Middle Earth that Tolkien wanted to happen. And he wanted people to build upon his foundations. Do not retread what he's written.
Have you been using a Ouija board or something to talk to him? How do you
No,
know?
I'm reading his letters. I'm reading his letters. And you know what? If there was a web resource, if there was a website where you could just type in a topic and it would bring up all of Tolkien's letters on the topic, Gosh, that would be a great resource.
Yeah, it would be great to have all of his letters available in an app. Yeah, searchable app. Yeah. Okay, but no, I mean, look, I can't tell you guys this over and over again, but I'm going to say it over again, even to you, Justin, my dear boy. Professor Tolkien was writing a letter to his publisher, and like Dr. Luke Shelton said on our show previously, you have to keep in mind who Tolkien was writing to. He was writing some of those letters
Context
to,
is as
yeah,
much as content.
yes, context of him writing that letter to his publisher. He actually said, I originally, a long time ago, had a grand idea that I could create a canvas, a larger canopy of a world where other hands and other artists could bring their hand to it. And then he said, absurd. He actually seriously, categorically mitigated what he was daydreaming about. And he told his publisher, I used to think that way, but now I know it's absurd that I once thought that way. Okay, I just got to say that. We just have to say that.
Okay,
But
final question.
nowadays, it really is not. Now, Professor Tolkien, if he had still lived 111 years or longer, he would be here with us now, and he would realize after the success of Peter Jackson's efforts and the other adaptations and the musicals and the energy all around his storytelling, he might be thrilled to realize that his original, youthful, absurd ambition was not quite so goofy and absurd at all. And now we're at a point, yes, where truthfully he succeeded all the way with his grandest scheme to create a bigger world, a sandbox where other people could come and play in the sandbox. And maybe that's the crossroads where we are at right now as a
Christopher
fandom.
Tolkien
We,
famously did not like the movies.
he famously hated the Peter
Do
Jackson
you
films.
think
He hated them
do you think
famously.
J.R.R. John Ron ruled Ron to his
John
friends?
Ronald Rule.
Do you think he would have liked the movies?
I think Professor Tolkien would have really enjoyed them much, much more than the original Zimmerman script that he got from Forrest Ackerman. And he really would have liked Peter Jackson's version more than the John Borman script, which included unbelievable amounts of sexual actions and nudity
Yeah,
and
I
craziness that was
I
out of
agree.
control. And
I
he would
think
have really liked the Peter Jackson movies more than the Ralph Bakshi animated film, maybe, just speculating, just speculating. But right now, we are at a crossroads where there's a room full of people, and we don't know these people from the last TV show that they did. And we as a fandom have to get strapped in with our seatbelts and get ready to take this ride because they're going to take us on this ride. So we might as well get ready for it. Okay. And
hey, real
just
quick,
get ready.
are there Ents in the Second Age?
Yes, most likely because the grand deforestation that happened, that Treebeard is complaining about in The Lord of the Rings, happened at the hands of the Numenorians. So we should be able to see great stretches of these ancient forests before the Numenorians arrived and took all that stuff down. There's going to be some ecological messaging in the story as
Wait, are
well.
the Numenorians the bad guys?
No, they were colonizers. They were behaving in a historical way that many colonizers behaved. They arrived and took and used the resources that they found.
Second question, is Tom Bombadil in the Second Age?
He's eternal, and we don't know if he's, running around in the bushes in the back 40. We don't know. But he's around. Yeah.
Boy, wouldn't it be fun if Tom Bombadil showed up in episode 9 of the first season?
People would blow a gasket and they would love it. They would love
They
it.
would love it.
They would love it. But it would draw a lot of fire because Tom Bombadil has nothing to do and no purpose to be in the story. So it would be appreciated, but it would also probably draw fire for, like, what the hell are you doing that for? He's got no
Okay,
reason.
all right. So
but I would like it. I would like Tom Bombadil to come.
We've talked
Yes,
about
like
the
that.
Atlantean connections to Numenor. You just
Okay.
mentioned the colonization efforts of Numenor. So let me ask you this: is there a peoples that can be considered like North American natives, where Numenorians came and colonized. So who are the natives that would have a grudge?
I don't know, because those original lands of Beleriand, all the lands of Beleriand were destroyed under the waves during the War of Wrath. And that is where those original Edain, those men who became Numenorians, they all came from. So they no longer had a land of any ancestry after it was destroyed in the War of Wrath. They had no land of ancestry. And so
So
probably that analogy won't work.
is Sauron then justified to destroy these people? He's like,
No.
you guys are ruining the world that I want to rule.
Oh,
You guys are
because they're
ruining my world.
no, they're not. No, they weren't ruining. They are doing both. They are bringing education and crafts and tools to the underdeveloped
Ooh,
men.
that
The
sounds very
underdeveloped men.
British.
But they're also colonizers. They're building vast fortresses and cities, and they're building their ships, and they need wood. So they chop down all these trees so they can build their mighty ships, and they go and sail around the world and back.
I can
and
totally
around
see
the world
myself. I
and
can
back.
totally see depending on where the story goes. If they position it in a certain way, I can totally see myself on the side of Sauron saying, "Yeah, these guys deserve to fall.
Oh,
Absolutely,
you're
corrupt them.
wacky.
They're
You're so wacky.
they're corrupted at their
No,
core. If they're gonna be like England
maybe.
and try to colonize the world and
Mm,
bring their language and their religion and their
mm.
teachings, and they think that all the free peoples of Middle Earth are dumber than they are."
No,
Um,
they don't know. You have grossly reduced
I don't.
everything down. You
I
have
don't know.
you have oversimplified to a ridiculous. Wait a minute. Aren't we talking about their great buildings and kingdoms of Gondor and Arnor in the north that are worth saving?
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
those are the kingdoms that all the heroes are
Westminster
fighting
Abbey's
for.
awesome. That's great. Yeah. It still
No,
doesn't
but
excuse what
all
they
the
did in
heroes,
India.
all of the heroes of the Third Age are fighting to preserve the ancient good parts, the best parts of the Numenorians. Look, there's both good
It.
and bad in what they bring.
I'm
There's
ready. I'm ready for
advanced
a show
technology,
about.
and there's also the drag, the real drag of them being colonizers. At the same time, they bring great advancements in technology, tools, agriculture, and methods of farming and irrigation and building cities, making a place survive for a civilian population. That they bring all the bad and the good together.
It's
We don't know what the
you.
writer's
You
room
sound
is
like
going to
a
do with it.
crown apologist.
I'm not a crown apologist. Oh, to hell with that. I'm so not a crown apologist. I'm just saying that the writer's room has a big, ambitious
You know,
task.
I've
An
already
ambitious task.
typecast Numenor as the evil colonizer and conquering barbarians. So I'm
Oh
just going to
God, they're
stick
not
with
like
that. And
that.
this
No,
show is going to be the greatest thing that is since
don't you
sliced
do
bread.
that.
This is Torn
Don't
Tuesday.
you do that.
We're here every day, every week at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, live on the internet. We keep the show up on Facebook and YouTube so you can watch the archives and share with your friend. You know, we wouldn't
He's
be
right.
since we're on YouTube, we have to do the YouTube thing. Hit that like and subscribe button.
Yes, please. Please set that. And I wanna do one last call out. Yes, Andrew, I'm gonna read this out loud. Yes, the men of Numenor were welcomed at first when they arrived on the shores of Middle Earth, but the
So were the
friction,
British.
yes, but listen to this part. The friction came later.
Same with the
So
British.
just like real life.
Just like
So
Hong Kong, just like India.
come on. Oh, hey now. We're talking about it. This is what Tolkien wrote. Let's
Holy
find
smokes!
out.
What I know
Let's
you don't. I know Tolkien doesn't want allegory, but what if
no.
Numenor is the British crown and the cosmopolitan
No,
Britain,
it's not
and
that simple.
they colonize Hong Kong and they colonize India, and then this story is the decolonization. Just like Cliff, in our lifetime, England had to give Hong Kong back to China,
Mm,
and England had to give India back to Indians. Correct?
I don't know. I don't want to get there. I don't want to go there.
Okay.
You know what I want to talk about? I don't even want to
And
go there,
Tolkien
dude.
wrote mythologies for England. So this sounds more English and this sounds more Tolkien than
I
ever.
don't
And
know about
I'm
that.
even more excited.
However, Professor Tolkien wrote a world that was flat. It was a flat Earth. In that mythology, it becomes a round planet at the point when Numenor is destroyed. And that might be the biggest and most spectacular thing that the studio can do for a big TV series, is show us what happens to Arda itself when the whole world is changed from flat
That's too
to
heavy,
round.
man. That I
No,
don't
but
want that.
it's in here. This is the story.
The chat room has spoken.
This
I'm
is the
out of my
story.
mind. You know, I'm
This
just
is
look.
the story.
I'm just making fun of the extreme. Let's take everything and throw it to the extreme, because we wouldn't be a clickbait YouTube video if we didn't send everything to its possible extreme and then bring it all
Indeed.
back.
Indeed.
So
Well,
let's bring it all back and say this show is shaping up to be pretty true to Tolkien.
maybe.
And
Hope.
if you know anything about Tolkien and his later writings, they did go dark and they did go deep. And the challenge is to prepare the audience, the global audience, for a Lord of the Rings show without hobbits. And on a
Oh,
future
really?
episode, I think we need to have that discussion of like, should they name it Lord of the Rings, or should they just avoid that branding whatsoever? But anyway, we're here every week, Tuesday, 5 p.m. I appreciate everybody in the chat room. Thank you for calling. Thank you for texting. I love hearing your voices. And our hotline is always open.
Yes, it is.
And
Yep.
Cliff gets the text messages, and I get the text message. So
Sometimes.
if you ever
Sometimes.
have a trivia question, and you need a quick answer, go ahead and text the hotline. Cliff might answer it. You
I'll
don't
do my
want me
best.
answering. I don't want to
No,
answer.
no, because you'll end up forwarding it to me and asking me anyways. But
Yeah.
you know what? I appreciate Andrew also pointed out that later in his life, Professor Tolkien reconsidered the flat Earth to change to round Earth concept for Arda. However, we got what we got after Christopher did his work editing the manuscripts, and we got what we got in the end. But it's wild. It's really wild to speculate because we're not entirely certain what books they licensed. But if Amazon Studio did license this material from the Silmarillion and also from Unfinished Tales, then we're in for all kinds of amazing treats. We're in for some big storylines that could go way deep with familiar characters that we know from the Third Age. And I hope they do a great job. I'm enthused by the casting. I'm enthused by a lot of the energy that's going on. But, we'll see what happens. I want to say thank you again, like Justin just said. Thank you, everybody.
And
It's
Princess
really good of
Toy
you
Nerd
to
in the
join
chat
us.
room
Thank you,
reminds
everybody.
us that no people or cultures are evil.
That is very, very true. Thank you, Princess Toy Nerd. The best. Wonderful to have our regular audience members with us. Pipsky, I got your message too. I love you. Good to hear from you. Everybody, take good care of yourselves. Get yourselves vaccinated if you can, like I just did. I got my vaccine just yesterday, actually, right here. So stay safe and stay healthy. And we're going to see you all next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, right here. Follow me at QuickBeam2000 at social media, Instagram and Twitter, and you can follow our channels at The One Ring Net. Can't wait to see you all again very soon. Until then, buenas noches y buena suerte.